Hey, what's up, everyone? Thank you guys so much for joining us for another great video meetup today, sponsored by Citrix. We've got a great show for y'all today. We're going to be talking all about app virtualization, desktop virtualization, other things that are probably playing a much bigger role now in this age of remote work. For more on this, we have a great panel of experts for y'all today, including an IT pro from the Spiceworks community, as well as a couple of experts from Citrix. So without further ado, let's go ahead and welcome our panel and say hi to some folks. Our first guest, it's been a while since we've had him on one of these shows. We're excited to have him back. If you have asked a question about Citrix in the Spiceworks community, he has probably answered it. He has a beaker avatar from Muppets. Please welcome Mr. Nick Casagrande. Nick, how's it going today?
Hey, how's everyone doing out there? Stay safe, stay healthy.
Yeah, Nick, thank you so much for joining us. Do you mind, for those folks who have not met you before, telling us a little about yourself and what you do?
Sure, my name is Nick Casagrande. I'm an IT director for LGL Recycling. We're a small investment firm. We own a couple of trash companies up and down the East Coast. Got about a dozen remote offices. I work from home 100%, and now my users are working from home 100% without any disruption at all, which we'll talk about in a bit.
All right, sounds awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Nick. We're excited to have you on. We'll go next to our Citrix panelist. Let's welcome Mr. Adam Lotz. Adam, how's it going today?
Hey guys, good morning. It's going great. So my name is Adam Lotz. I'm on our virtual apps and desktops product marketing team. I've actually been at Citrix for almost 20 years now. So way back in the day, I was an engineer working on our MetaFrame XP product line. So for anyone that's been with Citrix for a long time, you've probably heard me speak before, or possibly you're using a product I work on.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us as well, Adam. And last but not least, also from Citrix, let's welcome Mr. Jonathan Campos to the show. Jonathan, how's it going?
Hey everyone, Jonathan Campos here. Been with Citrix for about 5 years now. Previously in engineering, focused on networking technologies, and now a product marketing manager on the mobility side. So all things mobility, all things networking with Citrix. Any questions? We're here to help.
Awesome. Well, great. Thank you guys all so much. This should be a really great conversation. The dress rehearsal we had just a little while ago seemed like it was going to go on for hours. I think all these guys have a lot to say, and it should be a really good conversation. Before we go any further, there's a couple things I did want to point out. If you guys do have questions for our panel, make sure to get those questions in that Q&A widget down below. Also, please make sure to check out the resources, the downloads that Citrix is providing in that resource list. Looks like a lot of really great stuff, including a demo of Citrix Workspace. And wanted to give a special shout out to chat. See a lot of our favorite folks, including Brandon Clone One, Joel Kostelecki. You may see Nick in there as well. Of course, if you do participate in chat, we, of course, want you guys to adhere to our community guidelines and making sure that everyone's having a positive and professional experience in today's event. And as a special thank you for hanging out with us today, two of y'all are going to be walking away with a Sonos Beam, which is a smart TV soundbar with built-in Amazon Alexa. So perfect for binge watching since we can't do anything else but leave the house. But please stick around till the end of the program. We'll be announcing the winners of those Sonos soundbars, as well as taking your questions later on. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started into it. So Adam, I'd like to start off with you first. Obviously, times are changing. There's some folks that are like Nick, that it was a fairly headache-free, relatively experience to go to remote work because of some of the things they had in place. But for kind of everywhere in the grander scale of things, Adam, what are you seeing as some of the big challenges that organizations are facing, and even maybe you guys in particular are facing in this new remote work that we're living in?
Yeah, Justin, it's definitely been a strange transition for everyone, right? And I'd say, I said I've known Citrix for a long time. I've worked on a number of different teams, and some of those were more remote than others, right? So I've seen most recently I was in the office probably 4 days a week. So I had all the tools I needed to work from home. But transition-wise, I mean, the biggest challenge I've got is staying out of the kitchen. That seems to be my my one getaway from the office here I've got set up at home. But definitely talking to customers, I mean, it sounds like there's a real mix of preparedness for this event And as we look at people that are in various stages in their Citrix deployments, they've had different levels of success, right? So certainly talking to Nick earlier, it sounds like they were really well positioned to be able to migrate all of their existing users, or let all their existing users go home, right, and take the technologies they had with them. Whereas other folks we talked to, maybe they had a point deployment to allow remote work, or maybe they had Citrix set up for very specific things, and those guys were really scrambling to enable this new way of working and this new lack of physical space for everyone.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I myself am putting on that COVID-19. I'm sure, those trips to the kitchen aren't helping any of us for sure. Jonathan, what about you guys? What are you seeing as kind of the impacts to either you guys personally or your customers?
So on a personal level, I could say that it's for me, it's been all about structure and rhythm, to be honest, right? I've had to really stick with that. It's time to go to work, it's time to go to the office, and I'm a half-time remote employee, so I do have some experience working remotely. Sometimes I'll even take advantage and in a normal basis go and work out of a coffee shop to get a change of scenery and things of that nature. But really, for me, I think the biggest challenge has been balance with family. I think that by far has been my biggest challenge, right? Of course, with remote work, and then as well as school work and remote school, and then one thing that Adam mentioned, and it is very true, and I am going to admit it, also staying out of the kitchen. I've been in the kitchen a lot, snacking for
For
sure.
sure. Nick, what about you guys? So, I mean, you've been on, Citrix virtualization for a while. How was the transition for you guys? Were you scrambling? Was your hair on fire when, mandates came down that everyone was suddenly going to be working from home?
So I wish I had like a fire flood blood story for you, but unfortunately I just don't. So in 2010, we implemented Zen Desktop version 5, and I implemented a virtual first strategy. You've probably heard some companies have a cloud first. I am virtual first. So all of our users are 100% virtual desktops and apps. I do have roaming laptop users. Although some of them will have a traditional Windows laptop with VPN functionality, some of them actually just prefer a Chromebook and they just get into their virtual apps and desktops that way. But yeah, honestly, for us, it was really like a non-event. I mean, my biggest thing was some people wanted to take their desk phones home, and I had to give them a PoE injector, ship it to their house via Amazon, but that was it. Our users noticed no difference whatsoever because they were already 100% virtual anyway. I don't have any horror stories like where I was trying to source laptops on eBay or CDW or have people go look in their attics for their Packard Bell or Gateway computers to get connected from home. So yeah, we were like just in an amazing situation. Citrix isn't paying me to tell you this. This is just our experience. We are a virtual first company, and it was really a non-event.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Adam, let's go back to you. It sounds like Nick, one of the customers that had a really great experience. What are you guys seeing out of some of the other organizations that you guys work with? Is there a difference between how maybe some of the larger enterprises are handling things versus some of the smaller ones?
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting, right? The challenges that we're hearing from everybody are similar. So people want to know, how do I send these users home and make them productive? And a lot of times people want to know, are they being productive? And that's tough to measure, right? And I think everyone's getting a little bit of slack these days in terms of their work output. And as Jonathan said, finding that work rhythm is really important. But the more people I talk to inside Citrix, I mean, everyone's sort of they've made this their new normal, right? And people have gotten into a routine. They've figured out what works and what doesn't, and that's great. From the IT side of things, it's a lot of challenges around capacity, right? So maybe people hadn't planned for this. Maybe they were on that software journey already where they said, okay, I like virtualization. I see how this is going to help me out. But they were, again, at the 10, 20, 40% mark, not the 100% mark that we see people needing today. So a lot of those folks were sort of straining the capacity in their data center. They started looking at cloud. They started looking at other options, ways to expand beyond the footprint they had right now. And I'd say most people are seeing success there, right? I mean, even our biggest cloud partners have seen some growing pains because of this. And you might have heard about that in the news. I think those were somewhat overblown, right? Like everyone's managing, everything's getting by. But yeah, it was a huge shift for IT where people were suddenly migrating all of these workloads that might have been on-prem, they might have been applications running on users' desks. And now suddenly we needed ways to provide them remote access to all of that. And Citrix got a wide range of products there, right? So everything from just collaboration solutions all the way up to the full virtual apps and desktops suite and giving everyone access to everything through Workspace. So there's a lot of different things we can do to help people out, and in different ways people are managing this problem.
Jonathan, anything that you'd add? What are you seeing out of the different types of companies that you've seen?
So I think Adam summed it up great. But yeah, absolutely. It's been pretty seamless for some customers, right? Where we've just seen, well, everyone logs into Citrix in the office. Now we'll just go ahead and log into Citrix from home. And we've heard a lot of great stories there as well. And with the ability of being connected to the cloud, rapidly expanding is easy, right? Because you're leveraging those cloud resources on demand, right? So if there's a higher demand for, let's say, more NetScalers or Citrix Gateway, as we call them today, or there's more demand for more VDAs to have more virtual sessions, you can quickly expand those in the cloud and take advantage of that burstability that it offers.
Right. And I wanted to ask next. So Nick talked a little bit about what virtualization has, allowed them to do as an organization. Adam, let's go back to you. What more should folks know about how app and desktop virtualization fit into these types of environments?
Yeah, I mean, there was someone had asked in the Q&A, they said, well, how's the Citrix solution different from RDP, for instance? And I'd say that, we've been doing this for a long time, right? So I've been doing app virtualization for 20 years now at Citrix. Citrix has been doing it for 30 years. So we've got a lot of experience there in optimizing the end user experience, making it easier for IT admins, especially around things like scalability and platform and giving IT choice in how they roll things out. So if you're using Citrix 20 years ago, right, of course it was on premises. If you're using it 10 years ago, you might have said, okay, we're not going to do app virtualization. We're going to do VDI. We'll do desktop virtualization. And if you're using it today, your choices are probably where those workloads live, right, and how you mix in application virtualization to provide out those specific apps. Maybe it's even SaaS app content, right? You want to provide single sign-on to your end users so they can get access to different types of applications. And you might even be looking at either your own cloud deployment or a desktops as a service solution. The people are starting to call cloud desktops, right? So VDI is slowly morphing into cloud desktops, where we're saying, all right, we're going to manage these somewhere else. We're going to offload that infrastructure handling. So it's a big spectrum of options that people have got.
Yeah.
In terms of app and desktop virtualization specifically, right? I think it's really finding the best fit for your users and for your business practices. So there's plenty of folks that we've got that are still doing traditional Citrix application virtualization, and they're getting great density. And I'd say those folks were really well positioned to be able to provide out those mission critical apps right away. And then you go down the desktop side, you say, okay, I'm going to do a DAS solution. I'll do Citrix managed desktops, for instance, to give them that full desktop experience on Windows 10. And that's a great fit as well. And especially compared to other technologies, I think we've got a big advantage in that you're just going to give your users a URL to go to, and they're going to self-install that client. We take care of a lot of those security concerns you're going to have because, again, we're keeping everything inside the data center. So someone in chat had said, hey, we put a firewall up, we've allowed VPN connections in. And personally, I don't like VPNs, and as an IT guy, that's terrifying, right? Because now you're bridging these untrusted devices that your end users have, whether they're at home, whether they're borrowing someone's computer, who knows? That Packard Bell they booted up from 1995.
Right.
Who knows what's on there? And bridging that with your corporate network is a scary thing.
Absolutely, and that's where you have to think about zero trust, Adam. Just to kind of add to that, right? When we look at the traditional VPN, you have a device that sits at home that potentially has gaming applications that you're testing, different things that we don't necessarily want to see on a corporate network. Right? We create that VPN connection, and although in certain cases we may segment it to potentially a separate subnet or a separate environment, right? We can see that some of these applications do have the ability of penetrating the environment. And when we look at a virtualized environment, like say a virtualized desktop or a quick DAS deployment or a DAS solution, right? You're virtualizing that environment. Not necessarily that environment, I should say, but more so that instance, right? So the instance is just running on your device at home that could potentially have hazardous material, let's just say, right? And you won't have to worry about it. It's virtualized.
Nick, is there anything else you'd add as far as what you feel, using Citrix app and desktop virtualization really allowed you guys to be able to do when it comes to moving agile like this?
Well, it allowed us, for sure to keep all of our applications up to date. So we patch once and then we deploy. Same thing with virtual desktops. Patch Tuesday comes around, patch the gold image, deploy, done. So, right away, I'm instantly patching 100 PCs, whereas before I'm waiting on WSUS or SCCM to reach out. The users delay the patch, they don't want to install it, and the next thing you know is like 3 months have passed and users haven't accepted the patches to install. So with Citrix, IT is in control, if that's a good thing for certain times.
Absolutely.
So we can roll out those critical patches in the middle of the day, and the next time they log in, they just get them automatically. If someone needs a new application installed, I don't have to go, build a, MSI installer and roll it out through GPO. I just install it in the gold image, or I publish the app, and I'm done. The great thing for me was I work from home 100%. I have a dozen remote offices around the East Coast, and I have users all over the country. I can't be everywhere in one shot. So going virtual for me allowed me to put the apps and desktops in the data center where they belong and not in the user's hands. I don't ever get a phone call saying, hey, my laptop crashed, my desktop crashed, XYZ is broken. It just doesn't happen anymore. So while I have, incurred some time on the data center side, I've also gained a lot of time not having to deal with those end user issues anymore. If everyone's got a different laptop, or, you need this image or those drivers, like all of those problems just go away. Now, I'm not going to say you don't have different problems like profiles, or, your hypervisor may have an issue, but, it's definitely trimmed down a lot to where you really control everything inside this, virtualization bubble to the way you see fit, and you're not dealing with firefighting.
Yeah, and Nick, you said your ratio of users to IT staff was pretty hefty these days, right?
Yeah, it's basically everyone to me. So we used to have a large company. I used to have several hundred users, and I had a staff, and then the company got divested and sold off to a competitor, and now it's just me. So, and some people were saying, oh, well, now that we're a smaller company, are we going to get rid of Citrix? And I'm like, no, we actually need it now more than ever, because I don't have time to go deploying laptops and desktops to people. So no, we are continuing with Citrix, and it's not going away.
Adam, you mentioned going to the cloud earlier with VDI, desktop as a service, that kind of stuff. What if you have not been to the cloud yet? I mean, this is a good time to go? Like, what should folks know if you are if this is kind of first foray into utilizing something like that?
Yeah, I think it's a great time to go, and we've really got customers in all these different stages along that way, right? I mean, most of the people I talk to, if they didn't just finish up their last data center refresh, they've got maybe one more in them, and then they're not planning on doing anything after that. So, we're really trying to help customers get out of the business of managing their on-prem data centers, and focusing on those workloads and focusing on making their end users productive, right? That's more important for everybody. So I'd say, yeah, even if you're in one of those environments that's die hard, we're going to manage everything on prem. We're going to, keep the servers. That's how we know our data is secure. I mean, this is the perfect example of why we need to be able to be more flexible there in IT. And lots of people are bursting to the cloud now, where they're trying out these solutions like managed desktops, right? That gives you a cloud desktop to roll out in conjunction with what you have today, and lets you be much more controlled and careful in your rollout there. But certainly, I think in 5 years, the overall cloud situation will be very different, and everyone will have a cloud presence. It's just what they're doing with it and how they're making the most of that for their end users.
Mm-hmm. Jonathan, what about you? Do you feel like folks should be looking at the cloud first, or do you feel like it's still going to depend on what your specific use case is?
I think it depends on your specific use case. I think what we're seeing also a lot is a lot of hybrid customers, right? Where we see that they are partially on the cloud and they also partially on prem. There are still certain legacy workloads that we still find that customers tend to have really a challenge migrating from. It could be a mission critical application, or some type of, again, use case where they may have to be on prem. Another thing to also think about is regulatory, right? Maybe not all countries as well as all municipalities from that level may not allow cloud technologies just yet, right? We look at the federal government for an example, right? With Azure Gov, when we look at Azure Gov or AWS Gov, right? These are specific clouds that are dedicated for these federal agencies to take advantage of. So we are seeing the cloud providers really take advantage of these regulations and really kind of segment those customers. And we work with all of them, right? Time in and time out. We work with all of them. But yeah, I hope that answers the question. I mean, it all depends on the use case.
Now, Adam, you mentioned security earlier. Obviously, whether you're going to the cloud or on-prem, you're now allowing folks to access company data from kind of wherever they are. What do we need to know about security in these types of environments? How do we make sure that providing that access is something that's going to be safe?
Yeah, I mean, Citrix has been working on security solutions for our IT admins forever, right? That's a big part of what we do. So, I mean, I think that, well, we're talking today mostly around remote access and business continuity and giving users access to those IT resources as if they were in the office. The second thing that should be on everyone's mind is how do I secure that? How do I protect my environment? Especially protecting IT from all these what could potentially be, end user compromised devices. So we've got a lot of capabilities in the product that help you protect your intellectual property, help you protect the data center from anything that go on in that end user computer. So of course, since the session's virtualized, right, we're really just sending back and forth information. And I think Nick had mentioned, he's got certain things disabled in his environment, so he's not going to map in connections from the user's endpoint. He's not going to let them access content on their C drive. Everything will be accessed from the data center and stays in the data center. And we've got a wide range of customer attitudes about that. So some people bridge everything, almost like a VPN, and some people lock it all down so that end user at home can't even, print a document, take a screenshot, or copy things to the clipboard. So it all depends on your tolerance and your risk as a company and what you want to lock down and protect. But certainly, we've seen people doing that worldwide. The cloud shift changes that a tiny bit, but not a lot, right? So when we talk about clouds and trusting public cloud providers, that's as safe as you want it to be, right? So there's lots of different ways you can secure that connection from the cloud to your data center. Lots of different options you have for what content you allow back and forth. And frankly, I think in many ways it's going to be more secure than the on-prem managed data center we've seen in the past. It's just a different kind of threat and different risks to look out for. And someone asked
Nick,
about users.
let's go back to you. As far as security.
So someone had a question about user cell phone pictures, and we support session watermarking as well. So you can watermark every session inside Citrix and capture that. So if there is a data leak event, you know where it came from.
Absolutely. It'll have the username as well as the IP address where it came from. So probably not a good picture to take.
Interesting. Nick, let's go back to you. So regarding security, what do you feel are kind of the critical, security choices or best tips that you recommend when it comes to making sure that the user access is secured?
Well, one thing, you don't want to assume is that Citrix is, 100% secure. Some people will make that assumption when people are using virtual apps and desktops and go, oh, this thing is like bulletproof. No, it's not. You still have to, do your GPOs properly, your GPPs properly. Don't give users local admin rights to those VMs if that's something you do in your company. Me personally, when users work from home, I don't map in their local drives because I don't want something from their desktop migrating into mine. I do disable clipboard redirection. Some companies will, some companies won't. Some companies allow USB devices to be brought into session, other ones don't. So you don't want to think of Citrix as a catch-all and everything's going to be perfect because it's 100% secure in the data center. Your own security policies still have to apply. All we've done is taken that user's desktop and lift and shift it to the data center. So any security policies you were doing before, you still need to keep doing, and maybe you actually need to do more, perhaps. You may not want someone's compromised, I don't know, HP printer, if you ever saw that thing with Christian Slater, the wolf. You don't want a compromised printer coming into your environment. I mean, so you can disable all of that with Citrix. You can use NetScaler to perform health checks on the endpoint before you allow it to connect to your network. Does it have antivirus? Does it have malware? Should we perform a scan first? So there's definitely a lot to consider in the security world before you just let 5,000 people walk into your company with their personal devices. Think of it this way: would you allow someone to bring in their personal laptop and to connect to your corporate Wi-Fi? Chances are the answer is no. So if you think of it in those terms, you'll be fine. But definitely don't think just because your desktop is now in the data center, everything's 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to. I was
ahead.
going to say, I'd like to add. So Adam mentioned with respect to certain customers not bridging personal devices with corporate data, and Nick as well. And we've seen customers that do this, right? One thing to keep in mind is that an endpoint management solution could be utilized for a lot of these particular customers that necessarily want to still give the ability of letting those users leverage unmanaged devices, but also connect to corporate resources. When we take a look at, for an example, a typical unmanaged personal device may not have all the software updates that it needs, may not have all the necessary group policy objects that it needs, and so on and so forth, to really have the right security posture to really live on the corporate environment. When you take a look at an endpoint management solution like Citrix Endpoint Management, for an example, this particular solution can actually set this device to have the right security posture that it needs to really talk to the corporate network and really live in the corporate environment, whether it's managed or unmanaged. We mentioned GPOs. Well, we may not have access to group policy objects if that particular device is not a part of the Active Directory domain, right? So when we leverage an endpoint management solution like Citrix Endpoint Management, we can take advantage of deploying those exact same group policy objects that we're used to seeing today in a given corporate environment. So it's also one thing to add, because it could potentially, and again, it all depends on the business, right? And it all depends on the given use case. The real focus is all about, when we're working from home, is really having the best employee experience, right? We don't want to also send users home, due to this pandemic, and then have a horrible experience. You're going to be overwhelmed as an IT department solving a lot of these minute issues. Why can't I print? Why can't I access my jump drive? I can do it at the office, but I can't do it here, and so on and so forth, right? But at the same time, as an IT partner, you also have to think about, well, wait a minute. All of these use cases that my users need on a day-to-day basis to get work done, am I securing the environment? Because security has to, by no way, shape, or form, I mean, it has to be top of mind. It has to be, right? And we're seeing more and more reports about phishing attacks. We're seeing more and more reports about vulnerabilities with different collaboration software, right? And we again, business continuity, first thing that comes top of mind is definitely access to your work, but parallel to that has to be security.
Mm-hmm. I think related to that, another thing we did want to talk about is also endpoints. So like Nick said, you don't necessarily want everyone's, random desktop or laptop connecting to the network.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what are organizations doing right now when it comes to endpoints? Jonathan, do you guys recommend issuing new Chromebooks or iPads or something like that, or can, like Adam mentioned, folks be utilizing their old compact device towers that are enormous and beige as a way to try to get work done?
So that's a great question. First and foremost, I am a huge fan of Packard Bell. I was my first PC, and I want to just say that that's what revolutionized who I am today. So I really thank my Packard Bell that I bought at Radio Shack. But with that being said, right, Citrix has always been open to any device, anywhere, at any time. Right? We are the any company. And what we want to do is provide you with the best employee experience and provide you with the ability to get work done. Right? And we always say we power the future of work. So I don't want to necessarily say that you have to update all your devices. I mean, we look at Nick, for example. Nick, all of your users are leveraging thin clients, right? I believe you mentioned HP thin clients, right?
A
And I
lot of
mean,
them.
and I mean, just take that, bring it home, plug it into the internet, and you can access Citrix. It's that simple, right? So I don't necessarily think that we need to have new devices. I think with as simple as a Chromebook, you can get work done, right? A good example, my kids, virtual learning. What are they leveraging? They're leveraging a Chromebook, right? Managed by their school system, right? Their school system has actually enrolled this device and ensure that it has the software that it needs, the bookmarks that it needs, and so on and so forth, so that my kids pop open this Chromebook, they have access to all the virtual learning that they're leveraging on a day to day.
Yeah, I don't think I have any Packard Bells lying around. I might have a Gateway 2000 still out in the garage somewhere.
The best.
I mean, I think we see a lot of bring your own device these days, right? So people are using the machine they had at home. They're using their personal laptops, using whatever they had to get work done. And as Jonathan says, I mean, we're focused on making the experience great for them, regardless of what that device is, right? So it doesn't have to be the latest and greatest. It doesn't have to be a new PC. It doesn't have to be a Chromebook. It can be whatever you got. In situations where IT departments are getting asked, like, hey, I need a device, I have to have something to connect from. Yeah, we've seen all sorts of options out there, right? Everything from mailing thin clients to Chromebooks to saying, hey, here's $300, go to your local office store and pick up whatever you can get. And I mean, the good news is there's little management of those devices needed, and you point your users in the right direction, and away they go.
And Nick, what about you? I mean, were you guys pretty set as far as the endpoints, and how many different endpoints types are you guys using right now to access your environments?
I'd probably say we're somewhere in that neighborhood of 5 to 7 range. When I log into Director, I literally see everything out there. Chromebooks, Raspberry Pis, HP thin clients. I think I have a Dell Wise thin client laying around somewhere. Macs, PCs. I mean, just you name it. The one great thing about Citrix is, and I got asked this question when our users went to go work from home, for maybe one or two of them, but they're like, hey, I got to go work from home. How much is this going to cost me? What do I have to buy? And I'm like, you don't have to buy anything, and you can literally use anything you already have. I have someone using their kid's Raspberry Pi at home connected to their 56-inch HDMI TV, and a wireless keyboard. But in these stressful times when companies are downsizing, people are losing hours at their job. It's a rough time in our history. Obviously, it's so nice to be able to tell people you don't have to buy anything. Whatever you have will work. And it's comforting because some people are like, oh my God, the office is closed down. I got to stay home. Now I got to teach my kids. I got to be the teacher. I got to do this. I got to do that. My hours are reduced. How much now am I going to have to spend to be able to work from home? And I'm like, you don't have to spend a dime, And I just got oh my God, thank you so much. I don't need another expense right now. Because you go to some companies and they're like, nope, you got to have a corporate owned device. No, you have to have an HP. No, you have to have whatever the flavor of the day is, But, I mean, I literally have someone using, like I said, a Raspberry Pi connected to their HDMI that their kid had in their room. And it's great to be able to tell people use a Chromebook, use a Samsung tablet, use an iPad. I actually had a few of these Citrix mouses laying around from a previous conference that I sent people for their iPads. If anyone remembers that from years ago, it's like, you can use a mouse with an iPad. Yes, you can with Citrix. So, I mean, people were very relieved to know that they didn't have to go spend any money during these uncertain times.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. And then one last question before we go to the audience questions. Adam, so what other productivity tools do you see as important right now? And what are you seeing as far as how people should change their business processes?
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting. I think the proliferation of online chat services in the corporate setting that sort of went on over the last year to 18 months makes a big difference. That's helped a lot, actually. So, I mean, using some kind of internal communication tool so that it seems like you're in the office and you can easily get a hold of someone else makes a big difference. So between that, email, and critical applications, I think everyone's doing okay. It's just a shift in the way we're working. So for me, that's the biggest thing, right? Being able to just quickly fire off a quick chat message to someone else, get an answer back right away that lets me know everyone's still doing the right thing, and keeps everyone on track and lets us have those water cooler conversations a lot faster.
Jonathan, what about you? Any productivity tools you seeing as being particularly critical right now?
I think definitely our collaboration tools that we leverage. So we leverage GoToMeeting internally. I think that's definitely been one thing. Also, this guy right here, a webcam. I think a webcam is huge, right? Being able to collaborate, or just, sometimes I'll talk to Adam. I'll say, hey Adam, how are things with some of your hobbies that you're working on? Or we'll talk a little bit of hobby talk, just having casual conversation. Water cooler talk is what I like to call it, but it's virtual, of course, right? And that's really helped with my productivity, as kind of paradoxical as that sounds. Why? Because sometimes you got to just change the scenery, right? You got to refresh your brain, right? You can sit in front of this monitor for 12 hours just working and working and working and working, and sometimes we don't think, but that commute really just gives you that disconnect before you get to the office and on your way home, right? So, but as far as for me, productivity, I gotta say webcam for sure, number one.
And Nick, what about you, either for you or personally or your users, any other kind of productivity tools or things that have been critical to keeping y'all up and working still?
We do have a GoToMeeting subscription. We've had that for years, and definitely getting all of that, installed on users' PCs or the app on their phone has been amazing. I actually read some study years ago that says 80% of communication is body language, and I am a huge proponent of it. You will have such a faster conversation via audio and video than you will on just an old school dial-in conference bridge from 1989. It is uncanny. You can see people's reactions. You don't have people tripping over each other, like that we've all heard. It's so much better to have a video call than an audio call. It's just amazing. But so yeah, webcams, yeah, for sure. And apps on your phones. Hey, if you don't like GoToMeeting, hey, that's fine. Use Zoom, use WebEx, use whatever. I mean, we all have phones that can load these apps. So yeah, for sure. Video, like number one.
And then Adam's answers in as well. So first of all, we had a question from Stephen Hodges wondering about the total cost of ownership of desktop virtualization with a network appliance versus laptop and VPN. Adam, maybe you'll have first answer on this. I mean, obviously this is a complicated question, but what are the ways to kind of weigh whether or not this is actually going to make financial sense for you?
Yeah, it's a fair question. I think we've had a number of TCO studies throughout the years, and clearly the ones that Citrix pays for say Citrix is the best answer. I think that's a likely target though, right? So when you look at what virtualization does and you look at the IT benefits that we provide, the numbers are pretty dramatic. And even if you take out some of those human factors, you take out some of the management side of things, the cost benefits of getting rid of all of those physical devices is pretty substantial. That said, we don't want people to think about us as the cheapest solution, right? We don't want people to think about app and desktop virtualization strictly as a cost savings benefit. I think the situation we're in right now is the most dramatic evidence of the viability of this kind of solution, right? So customers that had already gone down this path were 100% ready to take it on, and like Nick said, just sent everybody home, and business continued as usual. So this is it's tough to say for IT, right? This isn't the time to focus on cost savings. It's time to focus on productivity. That said, I think you'll be pretty happy with the way it sorts out in the end, and I think you'll see a benefit there for a Citrix solution.
Jonathan, anything that you'd add to that? Jonathan, anything that you'd add to that?
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
employee experience, period. Right? I think. Oh, maybe. Sorry for that. But yeah, employee experience by far. I really think that there's a lot to look at when it comes to a total cost of ownership there, right? Is keeping that productivity consistent, right? Nick, what did he do? Send everybody home. Do you have an internet connection? Do you have something that connects to the internet? Cool, you're good. That's all you need, right? And not necessarily with other solutions do we see that seamless transition.
Right. Let's go to another question. This is from WCF J78. Adam, we'll start with you again. So how well do Citrix remote desktops virtualize high-end CAD workstations, things like 8 plus core CPUs and 16 plus RAM, high-end graphics? Are you guys, how familiar are you guys with like really intensive compute use cases like this?
That's a big use case for us. So we've got a lot of big enterprises around the world that use us for virtualizing CAD applications, largely for being able to distribute their workforce and be able to hire people where the talent is. Right. So we've got people that are doing that globally. They have a data center with high-end workstations or a cloud account with GPUs attached, and they're virtualizing those apps out to end users around the world. So that's very important for us and a great solution. The other thing that we can do in the short term, right, is we've got remote PC access technology that's based on those same HTX protocols and those same enhancements. So you can actually virtualize a user's actual desktop, right? So if they've got that high-end CAD workstation in the office, rather than send it home with them, you can virtualize the access to that. And again, they're going to get a good experience for all those renderings.
Jonathan, anything from you? Have you seen any noteworthy high-end use cases from customers or organizations you've talked to?
Yeah, I gotta agree with Adam end to end here. I mean, I mean, ditto is the best answer I got for that, for sure.
Okay. And Nick, are you guys using either CAD or any other sort of high-end users that are utilizing it?
We are not. However, I did help a friend spin up some of those VMs in Azure. As far as anyone doing CAD, CAM stuff nowadays, and you definitely want to put those VMs where the talent is. My first advice to anyone was, if you're going to go out and build high-end PCs nowadays, I would
Yeah.
honestly sit down and reconsider that, because I can go to Azure, I can swipe my credit card, and in a couple of clicks, I got the latest and greatest NVIDIA GeoForce cards and VMs, and I have unlimited RAM, unlimited SSD. To go bolt that stuff together nowadays, you really should step back and look at other solutions. Just like we don't build physical servers now anymore. The only thing I worry about is, how much capacity can I get on a VM, and does it have this SSD and whatever, and I just go for it. I mean, VMware now has NVMe virtual controllers. I mean, everything is virtual nowadays. To go bolt together a CAD station for someone, I just honestly think you're wasting your time. Go rent it in Azure, and you'll be up and running by the end of the day, or in a few
Right.
hours. But yeah, no,
And
I can't imagine anyone doing that
Mm-hmm.
nowadays.
and let's not forget, right? We're not also leveraging
Mm-hmm.
that horsepower per se, 24/7, right? So we also have the ability of shutting down those VMs when we're not necessarily using them and turning them on when we need them, right? So we can simplify that process as well. So that's one thing to absolutely think about when it comes to taking advantage of cloud. I mean, unless I would say you're not buying a big video card and a strong machine unless you're probably gaming at home these days, right? Almost always, if you're leveraging AutoCAD, if you're leveraging a lot of these high intense, high video applications, you're virtualizing it. You're virtualizing it. Bottom line, there's such substantial cost savings
Mm-hmm.
there.
Cool. Here's a security question. This one's from Seawick. Jonathan, we'll start with you. One of the main issues, I mean, we've talked about, not obviously you don't want end user devices on your network, but how does it work if they've got a home printer that they need access to? Seawick asks, is it better to use Workspace on their PC to allow for local printer access? Is this even safe to kind of allow? Is there just a security risk in allowing them to do that?
So one thing I'll always say is you'll definitely want to have your firmware up to date with any device that's on your network, right? That's an absolute given. But Citrix does offer printer redirection from the given endpoint, right? So we can leverage that, and we can also, with Citrix Endpoint Management, pre-configure printers as well to make that employee experience a little better. But when it comes to the security of these given endpoints, specifically with a printer, the one thing people tend to forget is that that device does connect to your network. That device does have a heartbeat. It has an IP address in your environment, right? So you want to make sure that when you're checking with your vendors, if there's a particular firmware update, you want to definitely do that.
Mhm. Adam, anything that you'd add to that?
Yeah, I think in the chat it sounds like we've got a lot of people with very print happy users. So I'd say that sure, you can probably enable many of those guys to print, and maybe using their own paper would change their habits.
Yeah.
And Nick, any advice that you would add to your response?
15, 20 years now. I mean, it's
Oh,
just
Nick, I think
it's
you're on
just.
mute.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
You're good now. You're good now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, printing from
Yeah, we
home,
can hear you.
absolutely. Everyone loves printing from home. Why people like printing, I honestly have no idea. But yeah, a lot of my users are stuck on the printing thing. And USB redirection works with anything on Citrix. So, that's another nice thing to tell people. It's like, hey, do I need to buy a certain kind of printer? I have an inkjet, I have a this, I have a that, I have a whatever. it's nice to be able to tell people they can just use whatever they want. But definitely, make sure that those drivers are up to date and do limit your USB redirection access on whatever devices you allow to come into the virtual desktop.
I like that while Nick is talking about printers, he's got this monster printer right behind him.
I do. I do. Rarely do I use it, though.
No, I find it's great for holding things on my desk, right? You can set your laptop on top of it. You can set some drinks on top of it, maybe a bag of chips.
That's fair.
Hey, here we go.
So I'll tell you, printing in my home is big. It's huge. My wife being a teacher, she has to consistently print out different worksheets, and then the kids also have to do that. Now that everyone's just kind of working at home, the kids print out. I mean, you can see right behind me is my wife's desk, and there's tons of paper that's consistently printed on every week. She's got all her schoolwork printed out, and I mean, some people just enjoy that printer, I tell you. I use it for scanning.
All right. That works. That also makes sense. Okay, a couple more questions. One from percussive maintenance. So coming from a RDP environment, what percentage change would our users notice from RDP to Citrix? We'll start with Jonathan. What are your thoughts on, we get this question a lot, RDP versus kind of specific VDI solutions. What would you say are kind of the big changes that users may experience or be aware of?
So bottom line, I'm going to go with my with 2 words: employee experience by far, right? So RDP is very simplistic in fashion, right? You can absolutely remotely connect to a desktop, but what about pre-configured policies? What about when it comes to specifically employee experience, when it comes to consistency of those protocols that are being leveraged, right? So Microsoft's RDP technology leverages TCP and UDP technology, depending on connectivity, of course, right? So you have 2 different protocols you're taking advantage of. Citrix can apply a better, more simplistic approach when it comes to that connectivity. One, that we know for sure, but also from an employee experience, leveraging that HDX protocol, right? So I'm going to definitely move things over to Adam. I know Adam has tons of experience with respect to the HDX protocol and can add more color on this for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of history there with Citrix and what we've done for the end user experience over that ICA and HCX protocol stack, and it's been a big point of investment for us for a long time. So when you talk about RDP versus Citrix, I mean, I think that's a question we've gotten, since the early 2000s. And as Jonathan said, it's all around employee experience, around connectivity, devices, responsiveness to those applications. We've got lots of very specific enhancements in our protocol stack to help make that work great, regardless of what your connection is or what your endpoint device is. So a big point of investment for Citrix over the years. The other thing is on the IT side, right? So we talk about IT admins and what it means for them. That's a dramatic shift in your management responsibilities and the way you can scale that environment. And in fact, the fact that we can manage that on-prem in the cloud, we can help you, really carefully monitor what's going on in your end user sessions and really just tie together that whole management experience for you. It makes a big difference on your experience in the back end.
All right. And then let's get another question around Citrix Workspace. Trent the Gent wants to know, have you guys heard of anybody using Citrix Workspace to run call centers virtually? I don't know, either Adam or
Yeah,
Jonathan, if you guys want to.
that's a big use case for us. So we've got lots of folks doing call center virtualization because they can literally outfit a whole office worth of call center workers with a handful of thin clients or low cost devices, and they can even tie in IP based headsets over that or USB devices. There's lots of different ways you can skin that cat. But the fact that you can rotate through shifts of employees without having to refresh your software stack, without having to have a bunch of different devices out there, and you can roll out new patches to applications, you can roll out new application sets, you can really manage that very tightly and give those folks exactly what they need to be productive as soon as they walk in the door. So yeah, we've got a big solution around that.
Yeah, our call center people have been using Citrix for years. Task workers, I mean, there's not a better use case for desktop and app virtualization than task workers.
Awesome.
A-
And then
And
Nick,
with
I think just kind of one last question for you. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
sorry about that. So I was also going to add, when you look at call centers, think about our support organization, right? Our Citrix support organization is completely remote right now. So if you do need support for any one of your Citrix products that you're leveraging today, I mean, you're talking to somebody that's working remotely, right? My brother is in support. He's an escalation engineer, so some of you guys maybe have spoken to him before. And when you look at when he's working from home. He's working from home with his soft phone and his virtual desktop all virtualized.
Last question for you. I mean, I think a lot of times, anytime we talk about virtualization and this type of stuff, folks do have questions about how commoditized it is. You've always been kind of a dyed-in-the-wool Citrix fan. What do you find about Citrix as compared to other app virtualization, desktop virtualization solutions that really set it apart?
I'm sorry, Justin. Who is the question directed toward?
Yeah.
You, yeah, Nick.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was. I thought you said Adam. My mistake. My mistake. So yeah, compared to other desktop virtualization solutions, Citrix is the leader. Honestly, I mean, I think they even built RDP for Microsoft back in the day. So I always people always like to compare Citrix to RDP. I mean, Horizon View is another great thing, but I would tell people honestly, what's your use case? If you got people coming from India or other countries, you have very high latency. You definitely need that NetScaler ICA magic that's been around for 30 years. RDP is just not going to leverage it. If you want policies, if you want your endpoints looked at before they connect, you really got to go with the leader, honestly. I mean, cost is one thing. Everyone's very cost sensitive. But, what's your time worth? I saw someone in the chat window say, well, I can build a $2,000 CAD station. Okay, great, you can. And when it goes down, what do you do then? What if the developer or the CAD guy wants to work from home? You're going to go pick up and send a $2,000 CAD station to the guy's house. What if he never comes back with it, for Christ's sake? What if you need more memory on that CAD station? It's a lot easier in Azure to just slide that bar and say, oh, now I have 16 gigabytes of RAM. Now I have 32 gigabytes of RAM. It's a lot easier to do things like that. So you got to go with the leader, in my opinion.
All right. And Adam, anything that you'd add to that? Where do you feel like Citrix really adds value kind of beyond what other solutions can provide?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a pretty wide range of solutions these days, right? So a lot of people, they think about Citrix, they think about what we were doing, back in 2005, and now it's really runs the gamut from networking to collaboration in our ShareFile product line, to the virtual apps and desktop side of things, our DAS offering with Citrix managed desktops. I mean, we've got lots of different ways to help IT optimize what they're doing, help you get to the cloud, and really define everything that you do in your business and make IT look good doing it. So it's a big shift for a lot of our customers as they've gotten deeper into the Citrix stack. But as Jonathan has said, improving the employee experience, simplifying IT's tasks, that's what we're all about, and making it as secure as we can as we go on that journey.
All right. Jonathan, any final takeaways from you as far as what folks ought to know walking away from this today?
Sorry, I was on mute there. So yeah, I think that if you could take anything away, working from home does definitely have its challenges when the entire family's here, right? When you've got the kids coming in with school questions, of course, my wife coming in with Zoom questions or virtual educational questions, and how do I get connection here and connection there? But it's about structure and rhythm for me, right? And I think that the major takeaway is that if we can have a simple and easy experience to get work done, uh, definitely, definitely do that, right? And just have that structure and rhythm for sure.
All right.
Oh,
Hopefully you guys can hear me. I'll do this real
yeah.
quick.
Now we can. Yeah.
for today's prizes are going to go to B Squared and Layer 3 Guru. You guys are the winners of our Sonos bar. Let us know where you would like that shipped by sending a private message to David S. in the community. And again, real quick, big thank you to Adam, Jonathan, and Nick, as well as to Citrix for sponsoring today's event. We hope to see you guys back here soon. We've got a lot of other events coming up. Until next time, though, guys, stay safe, keep it spicy, and we will see you all back here next time. So long, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you.
Have a good
Thanks,
one.
guys.